Strong Enough merch is now available. Go to strongenoughpod.com and see all the things that you can get to show your strong enough pride, as well as remind people and yourself that you are strong enough and you are worth it. Welcome to the Strong Enough podcast, where we talk about the challenges and celebrate the triumphs of people just like you. I'm your host, Claudia. Today's guest is going to talk about experiencing heartbreak. She's going to share how she was able to get through the most challenging times and what it was like rediscovering herself. She's also going to talk about the importance of connection in our lives. Please welcome Towani Clarke. Towani, how are you doing today?
I am great. How are you?
I am also great, and I am so excited to be here with you today because you are truly an amazing energy and light. And I noticed that the first time that we talked, which is why I wanted to have you on here so that you could share that amazing energy and light with others. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much. Just trying to live up to the name my grandmother gave me.
We might have to talk about that then. So since I want everybody else to feel that amazing energy and light, why don't you share with the audience a little about yourself?
Well, my name is Towani Clarke, and I don't actually have a middle name. So the Towani tells the story that part of me is from the southern part of Africa. Towani is a name from the Tumbuka group in Zambia, Malawi, which are where my grandparents are from. And then the Clark is English British. So I am very much a hybrid in many ways than one. I was born and grew up in Lusaka, Zambia, and my parents are still there, sister is still there. I moved to Denver, Colorado about 3 years ago. I followed the love of my life, and that's how I found myself over here. I have It's very interesting. A lot of people don't know my undergrad. I'm a bit of a nerd. I can't find my nerd glasses at the moment, but I'm a little bit of a nerd. I loved sciences at school, so I actually studied agriculture in university, and then have a in masters. I realized I was more entrepreneurial than research based, so I did a master's in business administration. And then my life got turned upside down and inside out when my first marriage collapsed, and then I had a major rethink about what I wanted to do with my life, and doing something totally different now. I For the last 14 years, I've been teaching yoga professionally, as well as designing clothes. I'm kind of figuring out how to do the designing side of things over here, but I'm full stream ahead with yoga, but really wanting to work deeper than the general yoga classes, to use yoga, meditation, and paradigm shifting to help people just make it through the doldrums of breakups. And it can be so many things that can break our heart. It could be the loss of a job, it could be a breakup, it could be a separation, it could be a divorce, it could be the passing on of someone really close to us. So much has happened in these last few years in all these areas.
I want to start by saying I'm a fellow nerd. So I actually went to high school at the School of Science and Math. So
I'm in good company.
we can nerd out together at some point in time, 100%.
So you're also hiding your nerd glasses somewhere.
Yes, yes, yes. I have them tucked away in my pocket, so it's all good. You talked about heartbreak, and what I really appreciated that you shared about that was how many different things can cause heartbreak. Because I do think the traditional perception is that it's a romantic relationship that ends, and now we are heartbroken. You talked about a lot of different things, though, that can cause heartbreak, and really, they cause the same feelings and issues and struggles. I would love it if you would share a little bit about the heartbreak that you experienced in the ending of your marriage and how that affected you.
I love that you bring that up. Now I look at heartbreak more on an energetic point of view, it is a severe, severing of an energetic connection that we have. And this energetic connection can be to a thing, it can be to a situation, it can be to another person. But we are such relational and such social beings that the severing of those connections that we feel are part of our survival is like, okay, I'm not okay. Maybe am I gonna live even? Am I okay? So that's pretty much how I felt as well. I married in my crazy wisdom of a 21-year-old. I married when I was 21, and I think about 11 years later, it was not working out. It was not working out, and I felt that I could not stay in that relationship without compromising some values that I held very close to my heart. So I made the tough decision to walk out. And that's another thing, Claudia, that sometimes you are the one who even walked out. And that doesn't mean that your heart is not broken in that process as well. And I was in my early to mid 30s. I had two young children. So that made it hard to make that decision. And as hard as that decision was, making the decision, I must say, making the decision was probably the hardest time. It's like, okay, should I not? That window of indecision was the worst. I mean, it was hard once I had made the decision, but it was a little bit easier.
I want to just completely agree with you there. I think a lot of us sit in that indecision for a long time and we don't realize how devastating and damaging that is. For me, I was actually in an abusive relationship, and this was many years ago before my husband. And I was in such a state of indecision. I was getting closer. You know what I mean? Like I was baby stepping my way, but I actually had to go to a therapist to explain everything and say, "Tell me I'm doing the right thing." Because I was so broken down at that point that I didn't even trust myself to make a good decision. So, I love that you brought up that indecision can be so devastating to us.
It's
What
it's
was it?
it's limbo.
Right,
It's just,
right.
and I think that was when the penny dropped. Is like I think for me the penny dropped when I realized that I cannot change this other person. And I'm not saying that other people can't change. I'm not saying that we can change. But, if the decision to change is a personal decision. It's not something that it can be really forced. And even when we decide that I do want to change, we may not have the tools to change. And yeah, or we have the tools, but we don't want to use them, and we're using them. It's a process. It's a process. So for me, the big aha moment that moved me out of the limbo of should I not, was you cannot change this other person. This other person could change, and they can change, but do they want to? One, two, what right do I have to enforce upon this other person what I think that they should be? I can take them as they are or leave them as that. That is my decision. So me I was basically pushing the decision from me to them. I don't want to make that decision. So you decide. You're deciding whether this relationship goes further by continuing or not continuing. But no, I needed to take ownership and say this is not working for me, and I'm not gonna wait for you to change, especially after I see that you are not really wanting to change anyways. And I wouldn't want someone forcing me to change either. I also put myself, would I want somebody forcing me to change?
Why do you think so many of us, and particularly women, do that? As in, we think we can change somebody. We can fix it. We can heal it. We can cure that other person and make them into what we want them to be. And it's all crap. We can't do that. But why do you think so many of us think we can and go into relationships or stay in relationships that really aren't the best for us, waiting to get that person to change.
Maybe it's the negative. I mean, that is a very good question, and I'd love to hear what some therapists would say about that. But I think it's something to do with our nurturing side of, wanting to help people, the other person evolve and change. That could be part of it, and the other part is just being so dependent, whether it's physically, emotionally, financially with the other person, that it is easier not to not to think about us making decision and just put it on the other person because we just don't want to confront. It's not working. I cannot fix. I cannot change the other person. That is a hard, it's a very hard thing to contemplate, and it's a harder thing to continue with because lives get so enmeshed, and this is what I'm talking about in my work is we get so enmeshed in each other's lives that the other person, there's almost like a we feed off sometimes each other's energies, and we get used to the energy of the other person, and cutting that off sometimes feels like cutting off part of ourselves. And if you have children, there's really the guilt as well, what's going to happen to the children. But at the end of the day, the children were the reason why I had to leave because I said, I do not want my children to live in this environment. So the children actually became, in the end, the reason why I needed to move on.
I really appreciate that you said that because I feel like, and I'm not a parent. I mean, I'm a fur parent, so that there's that. Um, but I have always, felt like when people say, "Oh, we're gonna stick it out for the kids. We're gonna stay together for the kids." That's horrible because there's so much now negative energy, and the kids see that, and now you're teaching them that this is what life is supposed to be like. And wouldn't they rather be in a situation where they have two happy parents that aren't together versus two miserable people together and thinking that that's the way that they have to live? So, what in you, really told you that no, that's not, the societal norm of got to stay together for the kids
Hmm.
wasn't right?
I think when it becomes life threatening, when
Mhm.
your life is, could possibly be in danger. And I think that's where being a mother can save us because you realize that it's not just about my life anymore. If something happens to me, what is going to happen to these children? So I need to survive. I need to survive and I need to thrive, not just for me, but for the sake of the children. And I think it finally came down to like this situation is not healthy at all. My life could be compromised. So as hard as this is, and it took a while. It took a while for the children to understand, and that was even hard because they were like, you know, you, daddy and you are not together because of you. And where I grew up in Zambia, it was really expected that the wife, that the mother puts up with this. There's so many things. I mean, if a man cheats, it's like, oh, that's how men are, right? But if a woman cheats, it's like she's a whore,
Mhm.
leave her. So it's kind of maybe might not be so much the case here, but in some circles it may be. There's a double standard as well some of the time, but really it's to move on. But the moving on, I didn't think that the moving on would be as difficult as it was. I thought that the hard thing was making the decision, but it was really just the beginning. And I think you mentioned with your experience that you were kind of broken down in that experience. You can lose self-worth. For me, I didn't even know who I was. I didn't know who I was anymore because I had walked into that marriage at 21 and I had walked out at 32. And I didn't know who I wasn't the 21-year-old anymore. I was in my 30s, a mother of two, but what did I want to do with my life? What was important to me? I was I was like starting from zero again. And it almost felt that I had lost 11 years of my life in a way because I had invested in this relationship. This is how I felt. I felt like I had invested in this relationship. So I was like going out in my 30s, like starting afresh as if I was in my 20s. And that was really demoralizing as well. Because I said, oh my gosh, what have I got to show? I mean, of course, the children, I have no regrets with the children. And ultimately, I have no regrets, but I had a lot of regrets at that time. And I was carrying a lot of hurt, and I didn't even know I was carrying a lot of hurt. That is what's interesting. It was later. It was funny enough, it was 5 years later. I was in a yoga class, and it was quite an intense yoga class, and I was doing a heart opening pose. If you've done yoga before, it's camel pose. And I was in this camel pose, and I was like, okay, I started to black out. So when people used to say blackout, I never really thought much about it. Like, okay, I think I now understand blackout because I stopped seeing. I was just seeing black. I stopped hearing except for this ringing noise in my ear in my ears. I was sick to the pit of my stomach, and I was so nauseous. And I'm like, I was in Cape Town. I had embarked on a yoga teacher training, and I was trying to do as many classes as I could. So this was a Bikram class. And I was like, nobody knows me here. I better get out of this pose before I pass out. That was the beginning of something's not okay. And then I thought, okay, it's just some weird day. Maybe it's something I ate. Maybe I overtrained. Maybe I did. Maybe. And I went back. I did a different pose this time, but also a heart opening pose. This one was cosmic dancer. So it's a balance. And I'm on one leg. Same thing, Chloe. Maybe not as intense, the same thing. And I spoke to my yoga teacher about it, and I realized it's my heart. It's my heart chakra. Girl, you may think you're all right. You're wearing that mask. You think you're going on with your life. You have got stuff to deal with. And you better start dealing with it. The sooner you deal with it, the better. So that was really my understanding that yoga, yes, yoga is fantastic to keep fit, but it's so much more than that. It's really about getting in touch not only with the physical energy of the body. I think everything is energy. So our body is really just the densest form of energy. Well, it's not entirely. We're made of a lot of water, so it's a bit squishy. So the hand goes in a little bit, but we're also our emotions, and we're also our thoughts, and that's what the whole aura is. And our heart actually emits electromagnetic waves that are known to extend probably 16 feet away from us. So we are basically moving balls of energy, just like the earth has a magnetic field around it. We have our own magnetic fields as too. And those fields are also affected by what's going on in our life.
I wanna go back and note, we do have a pretty big double standard here as well, so, it's very much the same all over, when it comes to that type of thing, so, sorry to disappoint you there, but it exists. So, moving on from that, you talked about how it was really difficult moving forward. So, kind of after you left, and this time that we think of is going to be, oh, I'm healing and I'm better and I'm free now and I'm away, was really hard for you. For a lot of people, that's the time when they go back
Mm,
to the familiar. Even though
mhm.
it's not good, it's familiar.
Right.
What in you kept you from doing that? What gave you the strength, even though it was so much harder than you thought it was gonna be, to keep moving forward? and to keep growing and healing on your own?
That's a good point. I almost said no, I didn't consider going back, but that's not true. I did consider going back, especially when somebody, my ex-husband now seemed to be, more repentant and was, you know, coming towards me in a more open way. And for the again, now the kids were like, okay, he's trying, right? He's trying. What kept me not going back in my case is I realized that the fundamental issues hadn't been addressed. And I said, if someone is being nice to me, they're being gracious towards me, but they're not talking about the issue and what they are going to do. And more importantly, what are they doing? What have they done and what are they doing? And since I didn't see that, that was a big red flag for me to say there has been no change. And what kept me strong was definitely a spiritual practice. Yeah, it was a spiritual practice. Do require a lot of support. It is about in the support that we received. I was really lucky to have a very supportive family. So my mother and my father were able to receive me. And in some situations, I've heard of some situations, women come out of a relationship, even if it's an abusive relationship, and say, no, go back. You know, they are told to go back. And I was very fortunate not to have that. I had parents who welcomed me back with open arms. So having that support and having the support of friends and having the support of a community of faith. So I think it's to remember that a breakup is about connection. So if we are losing this connection, and sometimes when we are, and I think this is a weakness that I've seen in myself and not so much in men, but more in women, we start to not focus on our other relationships. And depending on the partner you're with, some partners may be threatened by the time that we are spending with other people. So we become more and more dependent on this particular connection. And these are some of the things that I talk about in my courses. We are not meant to be dependent on so few people. We evolved as human beings in groups that were probably at least 100 or 150. I think it's the Dunbar number. So the negative thing now with the Western way of living is we are reducing the number of connections that we have. And I look at it like a table with fewer and fewer legs. And the less legs there are, the less stability that we have and the less strong that we have. We end up being. So we really need to foster the friendships, the relationships with family, with therapists, yoga. I think that's the other thing that why yoga can come in very handy, because many of us will not even see our best friend maybe once a week unless you work in the same place or you live really close. But if you go to a yoga class or some other activity, you'll be there 2, 3 times and you can actually form really good, healthy connections, hopefully, as well.
I love that, and I love your analogy of the table and the
Mm.
legs. And while you were talking about that, I was thinking about kind of how our world has shifted over the last few years, and we became more enclosed. We lost a lot of connections, and a lot of people still don't have as many connections because now we work from home and we work out at home, and we can do everything from home. We can even have stuff delivered to us, so technically we almost never have to leave. How much do you think that is negatively affecting our health and our happiness and our ability to be our best selves?
Hugely, hugely. And this is, a big part of what I talk about. And it goes against our very nature. It goes against our very DNA. A big part of why our brains are the size that they are as human beings is because it's designed to keep tab of all the connections. And connections, there's a, I don't know if you've heard of the concept of Ubuntu. So the concept of Ubuntu, it's from Southern Africa. So Ubuntu means I am because you are. You are because I am. So basically, I am who I am only because of the people around me. Apart from of course, there's the DNA that I came, which came from other people. So literally, even in DNA points of view, I am because of all these other people who came before me were there, and I'm carrying their DNA. But I also am who I am because of my mother, my father, my aunties, my brothers, my sisters, my teachers. Human beings are probably the most malleable species that there is. And our brains are literally molded depending on the interactions that we have. So when we are reducing our interactions, and with human beings, we're designed to make face-to-face contact. I don't know if you've ever tried to have a conversation or an argument by text. It is devastating sometimes and hilarious sometimes the others, because the words do not convey the emotion that the tone of voice will even. So you're better off a little bit with the phone, but then there's the face, the eyes, the cheekbones, the body posture, right? And at least you get some of that in Zoom. But when we're in person, remember, we have these fields. So we can literally feel each other's fields. And then there's all these other chemical energy messages that are transmitted when we're in. And if you're going to be in your little bubble, we're not getting that energy in, that exchange of energy, and we're not giving it. So we can't be as evolved or as developed the more we shut ourselves off.
I love all of that. It was amazing, and it reminded me of, the saying of we're the sum of the 5 closest people that we have, and basically talking about surrounding yourself with positive, successful, uplifting people, because you're more apt to be that way as well if you're surrounding yourself with that type of person. I wanna shift a little bit. I wanna talk about what it was like for you to rediscover you, because we agreed that both of us kind of felt lost, broken, didn't really know who we were anymore.
Absolutely.
Once you got through that, though, you really started to rediscover you. And I want you to talk about what that was like for you to have that experience and to really be in that and really allow yourself to find yourself.
That was the best. That was absolutely the best part. I think in the beginning, there was just so much pain, and it was so much about the past. It was so much hurt and pain about what happened. And then it was so much pain and hurt of what is now not going to happen, that I thought and I imagined would happen. But for me, it was, funnily enough, not having things go the way I wanted that helped me really find who I was. I ended up working in a law firm because, using my master's degree and, doing some process flow mapping. So I love the people, I love the place. They gave me a financial base. And then I hit the glass ceiling. I had nowhere to go from there. I wasn't a lawyer, so I couldn't become a partner in the firm. And I realized that I was not happy just coasting on this flat line. Yes, it was stable and reasonably well paying. And then I realized this is not what I saw with my life. And I admired the managing partner because he was living his dream. And I remember going home that weekend after picture this, Claudia. We're in this big executive boardroom at the law firm, and there's the four male partners that I all got to know very well, and they're wonderful people. They're sitting on one side of the boardroom table, and there's one Towani Clarke on the other side, and I'm now, all this men. I'm like, and I'm really emotional, and I'm like, I don't want to be that woman that just is crying, that emotional and crying. So I barely held it together and walked out literally miserable. Not because I was being fired, not that my job description would changed, but because there was nowhere for me to go. And I sat down in front of my altar that weekend and really just I do a chanting meditation, and I did this chanting meditation, and I love the inspirations that come. Whatever your spiritual practice is, go into it, because we are able to tap into energy beyond. For me, that spiritualness is tapping into energies that are really bigger than us and are outside of us, because we can circulate in our own. And that's why we need the connections, because we get something else coming in and something else going out. And then this, little bit of inspiration came in and says, so is this what you wanted to do with your life? Is this really what you wanted to do? Why are you so upset? Is this what you really wanted to do with your life? And I was like, no. Then, okay. So no big deal, right? Because this is not really what you wanted to do with your life. Next question. Okay. So what do you want to do with your life? Ooh, okay. I don't really know. This is okay. Kept going with my chanting meditation. What do you like? What do you enjoy? And they're like, oh, yeah, I have been enjoying yoga, and my teacher asked to help. And I really, people admire the things that I've designed, for my sisters, from the fabric my mom brings from her travels around Africa. And then it was like, oh, I could do that. So by the end of that chanting session, you know, by the end of the weekend, I was ecstatic. It's like, oh my gosh, I could do this and I could do that. And when I walked in on Monday morning, I think the partners were like, I don't know what state Tawani's going to be in, after, we saw her, our last meeting on Friday. And I was just like, I'm good. Because for the first time in my life, I asked myself, what do I want in my heart of hearts? What do I want? I realized at that point, it was always first, what should I do? What should I do to take care of the kids, or to take advantage of an opportunity? But then it evolved to, what could I do, on the basis of the resources, what makes sense. And I had never really asked myself, what brings me the greatest joy? Why can I not just go for what gives me the greatest joy? Start there.
Some people get to that step and they get really excited, and they think about that thing that's going to bring them joy, and they're super excited to do it, and then fear steps in. What if I fail? What if I'm not good at it? What if, what if, what if? What kept that from happening to you?
That is so true. There was fear. And remember, I was a single mom with two children, I think 10 and 5 probably at that point, maybe a little bit older. So not even in high school, elementary school, more or less. So that did happen. And fortunately for me, I hit it head on. I asked myself that deliberate, hard question. What if I fail? And that wasn't necessarily that same day and that same weekend, but over the days and weeks and months that came, I said, okay, because I was again in that limbo. Remember, we spoke about that limbo. I again reached a different kind of limbo, to say, oh my gosh, am I going to stay in this job, which is cushy, but I know my brain is, the nerd brain is not getting enough stimulation, or am I going to go in this new direction that I really need to even train up to have the skills to even do it? I'm not even going to kid myself that I have the skills. I will have to train up. What is it? And the pendulum would swing. Sometimes I would be more on this side, and sometimes I would more be on the other side that do it. And then it was okay, failure. Okay, what if you fail? I mean, that's tough. Sometimes we want to dance around that question. What if you fail? Okay, what if you fail? Um, I'll go and just get a job. I just go back out and get a job. Then I ask myself, wow, that's not so bad, is it? And then I said, okay, let's do choices. You fail. So the worst is you do it and you fail. You get a job. Is that so bad? Not ideal, but it's not terrible. Okay, let's look at the other side, right? You don't try and you always wonder what would have happened. Which would I rather live with? And when I posed it that way, there was no question. For me, there was no question whatsoever. I would, find it difficult to live with myself if I had not at least tried. So that for me, that was just a switch. But I always feel that it's not to be foolish about it. I didn't just say, I didn't walk in on Monday and say, I'm putting in my resignation and I'm stopping tomorrow. It wasn't like that. I needed to plan. I ultimately left 3 months later. I gave notice. We left on good terms. I had time to develop some savings. I had done some research on and I think that doing what serves us, and I speak a lot in my program about helping people find what really makes them sing, their heart sing, and what brings them joy, but also what plays to their gifts, and how giving these gifts to ourselves and others lights us and lights other people's lives. But it's not a zero sum game. I think everybody's path is different. So for me, it involved leaving the law firm and training to be a yoga teacher and starting to try out the designs, because I also designed clothes. But maybe for someone else, it's starting the hobby that they do over the weekend, or painting in evenings, or writing. I think everybody's journey looks different, but do what. And sometimes having the job is what enables us to have the time and the resources to do the other thing that we love. So I don't like either or kind of thinking, although sometimes for me, it does help. And some situations it's either you stay or you go, but a lot of the time there is some other options. I like to think of when I am more in tune with the energy of life, when I'm taking care of myself on a physical level, on a spiritual level, and an emotional level. I can see many options. I can see many ways this can come out, and I get more and more ideas of, oh, and that and that and that and that. But when I'm really low, sometimes there is not even one way out. It's not even either or. I'm stuck here.
What would you say to somebody who is where you were in that place of, I'm doing something that's comfortable, I'm making good money, but I don't love it, but I don't know what to do. What is one piece of advice that you would give that person?
And they don't know what brings them joy. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I speak a lot about this in the program, and why it's linked to heartbreak. And maybe sometimes it's difficult to see that, because for me, the relationship was keeping me in a certain orbit, in a certain way of thinking. And coming out of that was what was scary, because I'm coming from a situation of my life having a known trajectory, a known, even daily routine. To come out of it that's sometimes what we need to find who we are, is to get out of our ordinary routine. So for me, I moved, from one town back to another town. I was exposed to different things. Where I stayed with my ex-husband, I was not doing yoga, for instance. So I wouldn't have even known that I enjoyed yoga because I didn't even do yoga. So, and then that's the beautiful part of it. It's now to enjoy the exploration, sort of like, oh no, I don't know what to do. That like, fantastic. Let's have fun. Let's try some stuff. Try different stuff. Think of things that I used to enjoy, and, even if I was 6 years old when I did it, let me see, what's the equivalent for an adult or not. Just try. So now let's have fun trying stuff. Because children are adventurous. They will try so many things. So it's get out there and try stuff. Speak to people who are doing other things, volunteer in organizations and surprise yourself. Get out of your comfort zone. And if it
I love
doesn't
it.
work, that didn't work. Okay, I'm not going to do that again.
What's next?
What's next?
What is one thing somebody can do to start building connections? So, talking about that person who is home alone, they are kind of, tucked away, haven't gotten out much, whether it's because they have had a partner that was controlling them and keeping them from making connections, or if it's just that person who's afraid to put themselves out there. What is a small step that they could take to start building connections and feeling the benefit of doing that?
That's a good question. And I just want to say here, Claudia, that um, we should give ourselves some grace, first of all. We should give ourselves some grace because we are in the situation that we are because of the way our society has been structured. It's structured. If you look at an African village, for instance, there's often a central area, which is like a communal area that most huts or houses can see. And it's not a car park. It's a place where people meet. And a lot of the time also is people are only in their huts, really. The huts are really just for sleeping. You're not hanging out in there because a lot of them sometimes they have, if they have windows, I mean, they're kind of like really traditional because I think it helps us see in terms of the evolution is, so there's small windows. So it's dark in there. So what are you going to be doing in broad daylight in a dark little room on your own? It don't make any sense. So the whole society, the structures, even the physical structures, are designed that you get out and you interact because your cooking is done outside, your eating is done outside, right? And you are working communally. So we have to give ourselves some grace that we have found ourselves in a society that has done the exact opposite. We're in a society that has separated us. And with time, the separations are getting further and further, particularly that we're moving from town to town, state to state, or country, sometimes like me, jumping continents. So, it takes time for connections to form. And then maybe every 3 years, or you've moved several times in your life. So, first, give ourselves some grace. And then, secondly, be the one to take the first step. I know that might be scary, but take the first step, whether that's picking up the phone to maybe call one friend, one friendly person in your life. If there's one or if there's number, pick one person and say, let's meet up. And if you don't have that one person, then I would join some communal activity, whether it's volunteering in a community group. The closer it is, the better, because the closer it is, the the more, probably the easier it is to form those connections as well. Or if you have a passion or an interest in something and you know already that you like to paint, for instance, then you can kill two birds with one stone. You can be, finding out if you want to try more of this, or if you know already that you like to paint or you like to dance, join a dance club, go for some art classes, particularly group classes. And usually the group ones tend to be a little bit cheaper than the one-on-one tuition anyways. So those would be the two first steps. Three, give yourself some grace to be in this kind of a society.
I love it, and I love the money saving tip added on at the end because we always love to save money.
Chet and I, my husband, my second husband, the love of my life, who brought me over here, what we do is I realized I have to be intentional. In the situation of the villages, I would bump into people even if I didn't want to, just because of the way here. Even when you bump into somebody, somebody on the walk is not even greeting you, is
Mhm.
listening on headphones, so you can't make a connection. We have decided to be very intentional. So we have a group of friends. We do a potluck dinner
Mhm.
once a month, and it rotates in people's homes. And that's our intentional way of building community. Because even when you're as a couple, we can put ourselves in a precarious situation as a couple to just be have these two legs.
Mhm.
We need to also create friendships even together as a couple, but even separately, that enhances our relationship as a couple as well.
We have thought about doing that potluck also, so you have inspired me. I think we're just gonna take that leap.
It's, we started it last year, so we did it all of this year. It has been one of our greatest sources of joy
I love that.
outside of each other. We're humbled
Mhm.
again.
Well, one of my greatest sources of joy is tattoos. Uh, I love
Lenny.
them. I have a bunch, and you can't see any right now because 'cause I'm in a hoodie because it just turned cold here in Denver today, but I have a lot of tattoos, I love them. I know that you don't have any tattoos. I would love to know, if you were going to get a tattoo, what would you get and why?
Okay, I'll first explain why I wouldn't want to. I'm a sissy, so it's pain, and if I can avoid the pain, and then I'm very mercurial, so I like to change. So even
Mhm,
my
mhm.
hair. So I would love to do a tattoo if it was henna.
Okay, okay, okay. I like it, I like it.
I would do henna, but if I had to get a permanent tattoo, it would have to be something that would be is so permanent and central to my life that
Mm,
30 years from now, I would be able to look at that tattoo and say, "Oh, I'm still happy
mhm,
to see you." And so I would actually tattoo, and it's funny, my niece has actually done this on the back of her spine. I would I would tattoo my mantra that I have been chanting
mhm,
over, part of what gives me the strength to go through,
mhm,
to help me go through the craziness of life. And so Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and it's usually written like in Chinese characters, which are
mhm.
like from top to bottom. So I would probably have that. Okay, the front, that sounds too painful. I think might be less painful on the back.
If it's right on your spine, it's gonna be a little painful,
You know,
but I support you trying it out with henna.
with henna.
So, we're gonna get together and we're gonna make this happen.
Yeah, please ask Revolt Tattoos if they can add a henna
Mhm.
tattoo line. I will be their first client.
Excellent. I will contact them immediately. Tawani, where can people find you? So if they want to learn a little bit more about your story, if they want to join you for an amazing yoga class where they can open up and learn more about themselves, or if they want to get some henna as well, where can they find you?
Right. Good luck with the henna. But I have to go back to Zanzibar. That's where I had the best henna tattoos. Amazing. Um, I am found in social media, so you can find me with just my names at Towani Clarke on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, though I've got beef with Twitter. Elon Musk and I are not seeing eye to eye at the moment. So skip Twitter, but you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And my brand is Kuthuta. This is the yoga. Kuthuta means to breathe or heartbeat. So it's Kuthuta. So kuthuta.com or Kuthuta space yoga. And I have a group, it can be I was embarrassed. I was so embarrassed, Claudia, with my breakup. I felt like I had failed as a woman, as a mother, and as a person, and it can be embarrassing. And if other people in your life are not going through it, I kind of felt isolated. So I do have a group on Facebook called Heartbroken to Heartfelt Purpose, that if anyone who's listening feels like they could do with some support from people who are going through something similar, but also support of people who have some tools and things to help along the way, because it's nice to air our grievances but not get stuck in them. So
Yes.
Heartbroken to Heartfelt Purpose is the group on Facebook that we can chat in.
Tawani, you have been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and sharing your story so that you can help others make those connections and move forward in their lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just remembered I do have a program coming up, a specific 6-month program to help people through heartbreak and really help. It's actually called Rediscover Yourself After Heartbreak. It's going to help you make those new connections. It's going to help you release what's no longer serving you, bring in the new energy, change positives into positives, find out what your joy is, and have support through all of that. And yeah, so watch out for that too.
Yes, that is coming soon, so be on the lookout. Thank you.
So much. It's been wonderful.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and follow us on social media so you'll never miss what's going on. Remember, until next week, you are strong enough, you are worth it. Thank you for listening to the Strong Enough podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform by searching Strong Enough. And on YouTube, we're on the Spear Talk channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Strong Enough Pod. If you have suggestions for an upcoming episode or a future guest, please reach out at strongenoughpod@gmail.com. Remember, you are worth it.